Facts, Part 43. Seth MacFarlane and Mark Wahlberg were both booked to fly on American Airlines Flight 11, the first plane that crashed into the World Trade Center on 9/11. Wahlberg decided last minute to fly to Toronto instead, while MacFarlane missed the flight by 10 minutes due to a hangover. Both have said they've had countless dreams of the scenario in which they got on that plane. During the Holocaust, famous Jewish boxer Shlomo Aruch was forced to fight fellow prisoners at Auschwitz. It was merely for the entertainment of Nazi officers, and the losers would be sent to the gas chambers. Aruch survived over 200 fights over a 2-year span and was freed when the camp was liberated. Morbid Facts, Part 34. Famous Austrian composer and painter Arnold Schoenberg had triskaidekaphobia, aka a fear of the number 13. He feared the number so much that he called it 12A instead of 13. For years he was terrified that he would die on Friday the 13th when he was 76, since 7 plus 6 equals 13. In fact, he was so scared of that day that he stayed in bed all night until he essentially scared himself to death. He died of a heart attack just minutes before midnight. As per his request, the creator of Pringles had his ashes stored in a Pringles can when he died. 18 months after colon surgery, an Australian woman returned to the hospital when she was experiencing severe stomach pain. Apparently, the surgeons had accidentally left their scissors inside of her abdomen. Morbid Facts, Part 110. In the 1920s, not much was known about the effects of radium, so when a group of women were paid to use glow-in-the-dark radioactive paint, they were told that it was completely harmless. But after years of licking the tips of their paintbrushes while using this radium-based paint, the devastating effects eventually became obvious. Many of these women developed a condition known as radium jaw, which caused horrible tumors around the mouth, and some of their jaws would literally fall off. The ancient Romans would often substitute criminals into plays for punishment. So if a character died in the story, a real criminal would die on stage. The ancient Aztecs built swords out of obsidian, which is said to be 50 times sharper than surgical steel. These swords were apparently sharp enough to decapitate not only a human with one strike, but also a horse. Morbid Facts, Part 41. After her daughter died of yellow fever in 1872, a heartbroken mother wanted to make sure that her daughter was never alone in times of need. Since the daughter was terrified of storms, the grave was constructed with an entrance leading to a staircase that descends to her coffin. During thunderstorms, the mother would go to the graveyard and enter the tomb to comfort her child. Convicted rapists in Saudi Arabia are often executed by public beheadings. Disney's first water park, called River Country, closed in 2001 after an 11-year-old boy died from a brain-eating parasite he got in the lake. The park still lies completely abandoned to this day. Morbid Facts, Part 46. If you're a woman who is either very young, very old, rich, poor, stubborn, hangs out with other women, has ever been in an argument, has too many children, has a birthmark, or has had milk turn sour in your fridge, you would qualify as a witch in 1692 Salem and would promptly be executed. Some tumors can contain pockets of hair and teeth, and more rarely, some can even grow more complex organs like eyes, hands, and feet. Polish teenager Iga Jasica unexpectedly woke up in the middle of her brain surgery and calmly asked the doctor, "How's it going?" But she wasn't in any pain, so they talked about cats until the surgery was completed. Morbid Facts, Part 29. A 42-year-old Russian fisherman was viciously attacked by a bear in 2014, but he was saved when the ringtone his granddaughter installed on his iPhone suddenly went off. Justin Bieber's song Baby miraculously sent the bear running back into the woods. In Houston, Texas, a 19-year-old boy named Rashad died while attempting to play Russian roulette in front of friends. He apparently didn't know how the game works since he tried to use a semi-automatic pistol instead of a revolver. There are over 70 documented cases of transplant patients experiencing the same thoughts and feelings as their owners did in life. People have reported everything from craving their donor's favorite foods to inheriting their talents. It has posed a theory that the cells in our bodies can store memories. Morbid Facts, Part 68. This is the grave of Jesse Presley, Elvis Presley's twin brother who was stillborn. Elvis would often open up to friends and family about his unborn brother, telling them that he always had a persistent feeling that Jesse was somehow with him throughout his life. In the 1800s, you could pay your admission to the London Zoo by bringing in a pet cat or dog to feed the lions. This is a photo of an Australian model being distracted by the first plane that hit the World Trade Center on 9/11. She and many others thought the blast was just an accident until the second plane hit. In 2015, a dying fisherman told his two buddies to use his ashes as bait mix. 3 weeks after he died, his friends used his ashes to reel in this 180-pound monster carp. It was one of the largest carps ever caught. Morbid Facts, Part 71. This is a photo of two 4-year-old boys playing in a sandbox full of asbestos in the town of Wittenoom, Australia in 1954. This was during a time when very little was known about the devastating effects of asbestos on humans. Both boys eventually died from mesothelioma before the age of 40. This is how the population of American buffalo dropped from 30 million to 300 in just 50 years. Those are all buffalo skulls. During the French Revolution, people on death row often fought to be the first one executed by the guillotine. This was because the blade would dull after multiple uses and eventually wouldn't cut the head clean off on the first attempt. Morbid Facts, Part 42. When 13-year-old Ryan White got AIDS from a blood donor in 1984, he was only given 6 months to live. Even though doctors said he posed no risk to other students, he was banned from returning to school by a petition signed by 117 parents. An auction was even held to raise funds to keep him out, and a local newspaper that supported him received death threats. The family was forced to leave town when a bullet was shot through the window of their home. Ryan outlived the doctor's diagnosis by 5 years, dying at the age of 19. Frank Goldsmith was a Titanic survivor who later lived near Tiger Stadium in Detroit. But he said he never took his children to a ball game because the roar of the crowd reminded him of the screams of people dying in the freezing waters. Morbid Facts, Part 100. In 1999, the Davises had to give up their pet chimpanzee Mo after it bit off the finger of a woman who was visiting their California home. He was placed in a monkey sanctuary called Animal Haven Ranch. On Mo's 39th birthday, the couple visited him with a cake when 2 other chimps escaped from their enclosures. They approached the couple and started attacking them for not giving them cake too. Chimpanzees are twice as strong as humans and have no limits for savagery. They have also been known to attack body parts that humans need for survival. So acting accordingly, they ripped off the husband's face and bit off his fingers as well as his floppy trouser snake. The man was conscious during the whole attack and managed to survive after dozens of surgeries. Shortly afterwards, Mo escaped from the sanctuary and was never seen again. Morbid Facts, Part 21. When Ashton Kutcher was 13, he almost committed suicide by jumping off a hospital roof. His twin brother with cerebral palsy had only hours to live if he didn't get a heart transplant, so Ashton wanted to give him his. He was saved when his father and a nurse informed him that his brother had just received a donor. This is the gravestone of Elijah Bond, the man who patented the Ouija board. In 1871, a man survived the fire and sinking of a ship, but it gave him PTSD. 41 years later, he was finally able to overcome his fear and sail again, only to die in the sinking of that new ship, called the Titanic. Morbid Facts, Part 32. Judith Barcy, the girl who voiced Ducky in The Land Before Time, was shot and killed by her own father in a murder-suicide in 1988. She was only 10 years old. This is what the end of a species looks like. A keeper in Sudan says goodbye to the last male white rhino in the world, 2018. This is the last photo ever taken of American freediver Nicholas Mavoli. He was attempting to freedive 236 feet deep. He completed the dive, surfaced, gave the OK sign, tried to speak, and then he passed out. He never regained consciousness and died later that day to pulmonary edema.